Good afternoon, LinkedIn friends, HubSpot Nation. Happy Friday, March 14th, 2025. Happy Pi Day, actually. We're here for another episode of Let's Build GTM with Rob Jones and special guest, Crispy.
I guess I'm not special, which is choosing violence from the beginning. But yeah, Chris's, how are y'all? I did not know until right now that it's Pi Day. Shout out to Pi everywhere. Yeah, excited to eat some later.
Yeah, I didn't know it was Pi Day either. I will definitely be having pie, probably a quiche, just to mix it up. Not like pie,
There you go.
A quiche.
Yeah,
I guess technically that counts as a pie.
it's an egg pie. Yeah, egg pie.
What a way to ruin pies, I'll tell you. I actually found out I am the guy that gets to, I guess, inform everybody today. But I actually found out from a pizza place around the corner. Send me a text yesterday. Man. Crust pizza. You have any of that down there?
Yes. Yeah, dude. Crust is everywhere. Yeah. Do you go to the one in off Kirkendall?
Oh, there's one off Research.
Oh
yeah. It's Kirkendall.
Yeah.
So
I've never even heard of that.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. Thank you, Emerson. I can count on this guy. Always showing up. Quiche, no.
Quiche.
Oh, get out.
So enough about food. Always free to get back into it though. But why are we here today? It's just let's welcome in Mr. Barnett. Made a fun post yesterday saying that he's going hard on content and committing and even using some spicy language, I'd say, in the post. So why not bring him on and talk about that topic of why everybody sucks at go-to-market, which is obviously the reason we started this show. But I'll give you a hint, Chris. Like we changed the name of this show to Let's Build GTM because we figured like we're not going to actually let this land if it continues to be called community content, even though that's what's required to do the good GTM.
Yeah.
So this is like Trojan horse or Incept, like however you want to look at it. Our whole goal is to go hard on showing up every day. How do you do that? How do you do it with authenticity? As the new, and I think very soon only like go to market thanks to AI. So so what prompted your video from yesterday basically calling out like a bunch of people who aren't differentiated? Like, how do they even think about this? Like, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah. So in my role, I talk to hundreds of partners, literally hundreds of partners on the solutions partner side and the app partner side. And there is a synonymous problem across each of those caveats being the ecosystem has changed. I need to figure out how to source deals if I want to stay relevant to HubSpot. And the way that people are building out content and their go-to-market strategy is now more important than ever. And I have been having some conversations with others, I guess mainly as part of a sales process where we're telling them, hey, you need to do this or you will die. Like you will get eaten alive by people that are actually focusing on GTM. And if you don't, like you're not distinguished and unique enough to hold on to that anymore. It's just not a value prop that you can tell people as part of your customer journey. So the ways that I see this changing now, especially, are uniqueness is not real. There's 6,000 HubSpot partners in the ecosystem. You're not special out of 6,000, unfortunately. Everyone's delivering the same exact thing, right? B, if you truly do want to build a GTM strategy, you need to think about going into different verticals, being a ripper of other platforms, going into specific like service caveats, things like that, to actually start to build some level of uniqueness and use that as the foundation of your GTM. But if you're not thinking about it and you're going to rely upon those, HubSpot deals coming your way from direct reps or CSMs or whatever it is, you will not survive on that.
Are they heeding that advice?
The ones that are heeding that advice are becoming very successful with the way that they're generating deals. And this is not me even like plugging super. It's mainly just like I've been telling people, do one of three things. One is become a ripper of another system, in the sense of if you want to generate deals for HubSpot, become like just the axe killer, in the sense of I am going to kill off every MailChimp customer that there is and be the ripper of MailChimp or another system that could be industry focused or just some shitty version of a CRM somewhere, right? Becoming a ripper is a great way to build a specialty and go into that market. Two is if you find an industry or if you have previous specialties or connections inside of an industry, flex those and build a solution for that industry, which is a lot harder to do. But if you have an existing network that is present there, then definitely lean into it. Three, and I see a lot of partners doing this, but I don't see them doing it in a way that's actually impactful, is leaning into like private equity, venture capital, things like that, and becoming the value creation engine for those businesses. Ultimately, it's not, hey, we're going to optimize, your portfolio companies and we're going to introduce HubSpot, blah, blah, blah. The value prop is way more about we are the value creators for these businesses so that you can start to build an engine in your firm to buy and sell and acquire and merge all these different entities together. And those are the big three that I've been focusing on with partners. And we're seeing a lot of success in the first two because it's a lot easier to move in those verticals versus private equity and venture capital. But yeah, that's the short of it.
Sounds like niche, Nix, and then Neek, as in unique. I haven't figured out one for VCPE yet. But yeah, I was going to ask the question of top 3 ways to do that, and then we can kind of parse down or segment down as to like some examples that have worked or some ideas that have been, because there's not new uniqueness to your point, right? It's like there's 6,000, 7,000 is what I've heard. Maybe it's in between that, but it's harder to be unique and easier to differentiate from other offerings and to really put that out into the ether as part of your go-to-market.
Yeah.
Next to impossible, I would say. Like everything you just described is very solution focused, like for me. And like one thing from AI is like we can just innovate in ways that's just silly. So everybody's got new product, new service, like new coaching, like whatever. The gap is how you communicate that to everybody. Like I'm the ripper. What the hell does that even mean? Right? Like, do I even need to rip? Like, and that's where, like, I think the gap, like, it comes back to experience. Like, experience is still the true like differentiator. And while it used to be, like, how you sell, like as the differentiator, I think it's very plainly how you show up. Now it's wherever it is in the process. Right. And that's where it's hard to take like the people who are usually used to talking to customers or showing themselves, or maybe marketing's doing it on behalf of the org. Like that's not, you just can't do it anymore. Like everybody's got to participate, and it's not rocket science either. Yeah. Right. So like Super's obviously one of the better examples where a recent post from Matt was like, and I've been thinking about this since I read They Ask You Answer the first time, right? 2017. Content creation in the job description. Like, and you show that to people, like, and they like lose their minds. Like, and in reality, we create content every day when we're doing the sales conversations. Like, the words out of our mouths are content, like, no matter when or where it happens. So, like, that's like there's so much effort put into like the traditional approach, in my opinion, of like niching and differentiating the offering, when in reality, like most of that stuff like is hugely impacted by AI. So even if you do find that thing, like 6 months later, might not be that unique anymore, but nobody's going to take you like away from you.
Yeah.
Like, and that's only if you show up in the authentic way. Like you can't just do a bunch of videos about your new service, right, from a script. So I'm curious there, like, is that the people that you're seeing have success, is there some of that, or they're just able to move faster on the product service side? Because some people are definitely doing that. It's just not as like long-term sustainable, like in my opinion, to be differentiated.
I agree, and I think it's the main value prop that service providers, even going outside of the HubSpot ecosystem, should be thinking about is the experience. Because ultimately, echoing what we said before of you're not unique. Like, here's an example. If I am a HubSpot customer and I am now having to choose one partner to help onboard and implement, an enterprise growth suite for me or something like that, 90% of the deliverables will be the same across 10 different partners. I'm going to get the same custom properties, the same dashboards, the same workflows, the same object schema, all that stuff. The difference in my buying decision is I'm choosing who has the best experience for me because I know generally the deliverables are going to be the same. And so experience is everything in the sense of, I think a lot of people get confused with, should I standardize my products or productize my services? And the short answer is you can't. Like, you literally can't. Even if you're focused on like an industry and you're doing the same build for, plumbing companies or something, there's always going to be unique differences and variables in things that make each of those businesses different in the sense of you have to go and be more bespoke towards those customers. But the thing that you can start to standardize or productize is the way that your services are delivered. And that's the big difference, is that I think people get caught up in the sense of, I'm going to build an out-of-the-box version of HubSpot. Like, you shouldn't. Number one, you should be really more focused on how I standardize the way that my services are delivered. That way I can plug in any new person or any new platform or any new like service at the top of that funnel, because ultimately the delivery vessel is the same for the end customer. And that's what I'm trying to get people to think about, is until you start to think about like the mechanics of scale from that standpoint, you're always going to be stumped in your growth and you're always going to get beaten out by those that are already doing this.
Story time. So here's how my brain thinks of that. And it's literally a delivery service. But, I want to say sometime during or after COVID, we were thinking about diet and food regimen and whatnot. And so there was a lot of, like, okay, we can try this. We should cook better. We should do whatever. Basically what we were eating was going to be the same. So we tried a couple literally. And with the one that we first landed on was, the macros, all that was relatively the same options for like prepared meals. The one that we ended up going with for a long time was literally delivered to us the same time every week. So that the competitive differentiation was in the delivery of, not only is all the stuff you were talking about, 90% is going to be same ingredients, same food, same option, same whatever, but this one shows up in a freezer pack on my doorstep Saturday mornings at the same time. I don't even have to cook. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to do anything. That was a competitive different. Now I feel like there's a lot of those type of options, right? But the delivery experience was the thing that set it apart, quite literally. Yeah, but that's what you're saying for companies now, is like a lot of it can't be standardized. 90% is going to be the same deliverables, but what you can like niche into and differentiate is how the delivery process goes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that a big part of this is being a tech-enabled service provider, where like Chris, you mentioned like ChatGPT. That's a great example of being a tech-enabled service provider. For example, a lot of partners or service providers will use ChatGPT to auto-format content or create SOPs, things like that. Like, that is super impactful and saves a lot of time and helps you provide better service via a better experience, ultimately. That, and thinking about other facets of your service and how you can become tech-enabled, helps build those mechanics of scale. Because ultimately, if you're scaling up upon people, it's not going to work. Humans are not reliable, and there's always variables that affect how, like, I built a service business, so it sucks. And so like being tech enabled makes it a lot easier because technology is reliable. It helps you scale. And there's always emerging technology that can help better the quality of your service you're giving to your customers. But I think that there's this misconception in the sense of, if I'm delivering through platforms and not people, I'm not as valuable or unique or bespoke to the customer's needs. It's not as intimate of an experience, which is just wrong. Like, the best possible experience you can have is the one that satisfies the needs of the customers, keeps them happy, and keeps them around long term. Whether a person's involved in that doesn't really matter. It's about, are you delivering the things you said you're going to deliver and going beyond just the problem sets and presenting solutions that are scalable for you and the customer.
Right. Yeah. I'd say like if it does replace that stuff, it's your fault. Like it's like the whole of this is the challenge I see is like it looks and is like time consuming to show up on LinkedIn every day, to show up in Sprocketeer, to show up in the community.
Yep.
Be a part of the conversation. And that's like one of the few ways you can actually give that, you can bring that delivery experience to the go-to-market, because you like people know who you are, and you won't be, that doesn't mean you're going to be a fit for everybody just because you're being authentic, but that's where you show like I'm a fit for manufacturing. I'm not a fit for SaaS, just because of the way I talk and the language that I use. Right. So that's where like the three things I think can show themselves. It's not about talking about this is how I solve, or this is the solution I made for manufacturing. It's about like expressing like why that's the focus for you versus everybody else who might show up. So like so how do you help them think about like, because the tech enablement really just allows you to show up every day, like in these spaces that feel so burdensome, feel so like I'm supposed to be delegating this stuff as a leader. This is what the marketing team's supposed to be doing. I'm not supposed to be showing up on LinkedIn like this. All these excuses that come out. When in reality, there's also these like trade shows and events and like technical things like where these same people like do show up and they network and they know the power of all of these same outcomes. They just for some reason think that it should not be a priority for them to show up on LinkedIn and, be a part of that conversation.
I love when people think that, because showing up, I mean, statistically, there however many active LinkedIn users, they're all lurking. Showing up in and of itself is a differentiator, I would say.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
So just being on there and actively listening and being engaged, like I can say this about both of you. If I text Crispy within reasonable time, he's going to respond. Same in Slack, same whatever. That to me, doing that enough times builds trust and confidence almost indirectly in the business that you are associated with. So like if I think of the people at Supered, for example, like I know that I'm going to get a response quickly and I'm going to have whatever it is addressed. It's not necessarily through Supered, it's through the people that make up Supered.
Yeah.
So even being on LinkedIn, statistically is something that's more unique than it is commonplace, and being involved and active.
Yeah, I agree. And I phrase this to Boolean, and I totally agree. And this is like methodology that I subscribe to as a human, which is the unique differentiator is just showing up. Like if you don't show up, I'm going to destroy you. Like I'm going to win, and that's it, period. Like you can choose to be viciously mediocre, or you can choose to get the fuck after it. And that's like one of those two options. And it's part of like operating principles and core values and culture of like that desire to post on LinkedIn. So it's not I will, it's I want to go and do this, like because it's good for my brand, it's good for the company's brand, it's good for my colleagues and friends and network and stuff like that. And so I every like partner agency that I either talk to in the Super League or just mentor, I tell them all the time, post consistently, block time to go and do it. It feels silly and it's hard, but I'm telling you, it pays off. Like do it for your own personal brand. Like it's so impactful. And I think that there's also a misconception around who you're building content for as well. I think that there's a lot of influencers, even in our ecosystem, that build content for other solutions partners, which is not what you should be doing. Like if you want to establish credibility, you want to establish credibility with your customers, not with your theoretical competitors in that sense. And so build the content that helps you break into those verticals, like be the Ripper and build Ripper content, be the niche industry and build the niche industry content, be the PE and build the PE content. And so it's being impactful and committed and intentional with the way that you're building your network and therefore building your brand and business.
I would say too, as a point, is that really, it's not up to you whether you're unique or not. It's up to the customer. In the same way that like value is very much dictated by the customer and the experience, they make that choice. And so, I mean, I've done this and chosen to show up kind of in a weird comedic way with a lot of the top of funnel stuff. Other people decide if that's valuable or if that's a differentiator. For a lot of the weird stuff I've done, it is. But they also get to then have you top of mind and then go and decide if your like actual offering, and just in my case with top of funnel content and all that, is valuable and how differentiated it is.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's know your audience. I think is the main one. Know who you're building content for. Know that the content needs to resonate with your end user. And I just finished Story Brand. Boom. Fantastic book. Unbelievably great content. And so I've been walking through like the GTM strategy with some of our partners. And there's a couple of things that I realized. One is they don't know who their audience is. Like truly don't know who their audience is. A job title, not an audience. Not. Your messaging should also resonate with your heroes to overcome a struggle to achieve a mission in Story Brand Framework. You need to be a guide for that, which is usually someone that challenges them on their thoughts and opinions and points them in the right direction. And then finally, I see this is the biggest mistake that I see service providers do when they go to market, is they communicate their offering in a way that they understand as a person and don't put themselves in the shoes of the person that's supposed to be digesting the content. And my rule of thumb that I tell them is write your content as if you're explaining it to your wife. Like, because most people, if you say, yeah, we're going to build a bunch of custom properties in HubSpot, it's like, well, my house is on a property. Like, is that what that means? Like, what? It's like, no, like define it in a way that makes sense for those that are foreign to whatever your offering is, or if part of your offering includes education, educate them in a way that is impactful and easy for them to understand. And that's easily the biggest thing that I see as a mistake.
It's like behind closed doors copy, right? I saw this on a post, but it's like great copy isn't written, it's overheard. And so if this is, me explaining it to Meg or the kids, I did something on that yesterday with like, what do you, to my 11-year-old, it's like, what do you guys do? It's like, well, if you ever played pin the tail on the donkey. So we made a video, it's clever, it's funny, it's for an 11-year-old, but that was me attempting to explain like, what is the actual value of RevOps? My kids think I work for HopeSpot, by the way, which is awesome and endearing, but being able to do that, it may not be that in no way is like dumbing it down or watering it down in any way. Einstein said, if you can't explain something to a 6-year-old, you yourself don't understand it.
Bingo.
So to your point, it's less like, oh, these, whatever the custom property example was, it's like, what does that actually mean? Who cares? What does that actually mean? What's the actual value?
Yeah. I totally agree.
Oh, that's fair. And the biggest thing I've learned over the last year of just like literally prioritizing showing up every day. Like that's the priority. And then whatever's going to happen, with the belief of like, if I'm bringing value while I show up, then value is going to come back. Right. I'll continue to say it's a big reason why, Profoundly exists now, because all those relationships that were built, all that audience, and now it's just like very super powered now that it's like coming all together the way it is. And like the whole, like the traditional approach of trying to figure all this stuff out, like maybe you can by doing all this research, go and checking out the Reddit, going to the HubSpot community. Like it's not about disconnecting yourself from the customer, but like so much of the prescription is required because of the way that we're choosing to attack the problem, right? And when I started Let's Build last year, I like knowing that, I kind of let myself off the hook because it's like everybody's in this gap of HubSpot lack of knowledge about how the systems work, no matter the job title, no matter if they're an agency or they work for HubSpot or they're 10-year vet or they're an intern or a student, you have no idea where their knowledge gap is when it comes to HubSpot, because the word HubSpot itself is now ambiguous as it's ever been before. Right. So I'm just going to talk about things that I'm passionate about and things that I'm seeing are serious knowledge gaps that I want to speak about. Right. And if I would have been on a team or inside of an organization, we've had to go through that. Okay, let's get the message right. Like, who's the demographic, right? But at the end of a quarter of doing that, I take all my transcripts, I put them all into GPT, and I said, give me the theme, the narrative, the voice, and the tone. And like, I couldn't have planned it any better. Like, wow, that's really awesome. Like, if I had planned this ahead of time, this is what I would want to be the result. And like, surprise, because I was just showing up and talking about stuff passionately. Right. And like, that's where, instead of trying to prescribe up front and figure out, like, even like the 5-year-old, 10-year-old wife, like whoever, when you just show up every day and you're a part of the conversation, the content you create is natural responses to the conversation.
Yep.
Bingo.
And like, you don't overthink it, and you just naturally start using the same words. But even when you start to use different words, since it's in the conversation, you can feel the friction. It turns like bad friction into good friction very quickly, because it's either learning experience. It's usually learning experience for both sides. Either I'm a user and I need to update my understanding of this word, or I'm the service provider and I need to update my understanding. And we just continue creating content together. And that's where I feel like it's so hard to get that wrong. Like, when you show up that way, right?
I can help you figure it out, at least the unlock for me. And I heard this from several people, and I feel like I made a video or a post about this that got buried. But there's this concept of like market like a media company, right? It's like, oh, that means you should do media or video or music even. It's like, that's not what media means in that scenario. Media is the news, and what it does is reflect real-time changes. So that is exactly, you should be responsive and agile and available. If you're not making content that's about a new hub that launched or a new feature or a series of updates, you are failing because you're behind, and people care about the updates now. So marketing like a media company never was about the format or interface. It was about, I am going to share updates and how they pertain to my industry ecosystem because they're happening all around me in real time. It's more of almost being like a news affiliate for updates to, the things that your audience and ICP, if you will, care about.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I find this is a point of friction with partners because they cling on to this concept of IP in the sense of why should I create this and share this with the ecosystem when all of my competitors can take it and use it for their own customers? One, it's you don't own this. Like, if you're painting a canvas, just because you paint it a certain way doesn't mean that you own all of painting. That's not how that works. Number two is you shouldn't be like, if your fear is building content that other people will use in their own business, then like that entire concept of the way you're going to market will also fail. Like, again, echoing experience beats everything else. And so I think that there's reservations about doing that, and even going to things like the HubSpot community pages or, building solutions and sharing them publicly. When I was a partner, I would go to the HubSpot community pages and solve real-time customer needs, do a Loom video and publish it to LinkedIn. I remember I was like, I don't care. If it helps other people, great. Because it means that I'm establishing credibility, thought leadership, and I'm building myself in the ecosystem, which then I can use as part of like building the brand. But I think there's serious reservations about people doing that. And it's a fear that they have to overcome.
And it doesn't make any, I obviously am not a founder, and MBA is a degree I did not get. But for me, in this ecosystem, I feel like HubSpot's goal is to increase their TAM to 76 billion. So Yamini said this was a concept that we kind of threw some development behind and built branding for, but like a rising tide lifts all boats. It's almost, if HubSpot is not going to get there, it's not good for anybody in the ecosystem, partner, like solution services, anybody at all. And so there's this, I don't think it would ever work, but to your point about IP, Crispy, is like, how does cancer research work? It's open source. Like there's a very open source IP because it's for the good of a larger entity, like the general public, right? And so, yeah, to your point of IP and things that built and solutioning, whether you get credit, take credit, whether it helps somebody else, I almost feel like you just said, like, the fear is that other people will use that in their business. That should be celebrated, shouldn't it? If people are copying you or looking to you as a provider, that establishes authority, trust, like experience. It makes you be seen as somebody in the space that can be trusted, or that, I mean, I just have never quite understood the reluctance being anything other than like financial or revenue based, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's insecurity.
Yeah, no, and that's a large part of Rob, you brought up before we started the measurement trap and the manifesto that we went over last week, and like that value first principles, right, that I've been working on for a few months now. Like I actually created 9 more trap manifestos like right after our live conversation. So I only needed to resonate a couple times. This is the part that people don't understand about showing up every day. Like you only needed your message or the way that you present yourself. You only need it to resonate a couple times, like from vastly different audiences or different people, right? To understand, like, oh, this is gonna work, right? And so I go do that, but a large part of the premise of the value first is scarcity versus abundance, right? And coming from manufacturing, it was always a problem. Like, we can't be online because then our competitors will know. It's like, well, and this is why I resonated with They Ask You Answer. Like in the same year, 2017, it was like meet HubSpot, meet They Ask You Answer, meet StoryBrand. Yeah. And I was like, okay, all this stuff makes so much sense. I don't really need to go look for solve for the customer. Okay, I got it. Right. Instead, we're like, oh, we can't do that because then they'll see it. And it's an easy conversation when you can frame it the right way, like with these leaders, but like uncovering that that's actually at the core of the problem is not always easy. But literally, like if you keep it from one competitor, you're keeping it from 100 customers, 1,000 customers.
I feel like that's an easy one for Crispy to dismiss. Like they'll see it. Who? Your target audience? Was that bad? Like, what do you mean they'll see it? Of course, the hope is that somebody sees it.
Right. And it's like a very real example was there was a trade show I went to in 2021, and there was a new product coming out, but we couldn't announce it because it had to be secret. And yet we sent 20,000 postcards to the people that were showing up to that event so that they would come to the booth, right? And we got 100 of them to come to the booth, but I couldn't do any promo after or before about the product, right? And of the 100 people that came to the booth, 5 competitors came to the booth. And so since I can't do anything outside of that moment, guess who owns the narrative after that show? The 5 competitors. Because the other 95 people that aren't customers yet, they're not going to remember or know enough. But those competitors, like, it's on the board at this point. Like, and any question they get, they're going to own the narrative because you can't find any information anywhere else, right? So literally this idea, and I'll say also, like, if we truly believe, like I'd say most people should, like HubSpot is the most affordable, the most scalable, the thing that any business in any vertical, in my opinion, can build and grow and scale a business on in the most affordable way, like guaranteed. If we all believe that, the only thing that can get in the way of that is the ecosystem itself, right? Because when we have 6 hubs and people are only using 3, but we know for a fact it would be value for their business. Why aren't they doing that? Because they're not aware, right? And they're not aware because we're not sharing knowledge openly, right? And if they become aware, now everybody starts using it. The projects and contracts that you're going to get as a partner are bigger and better because you're not spending time teaching people like during the sales process and then trying to surprise them with upgrades and like packages.
Yeah. I would say, I think this is another kind of Booleanism, but like people aren't aware, no matter if you've told them before. Like it takes a long time for things to catch on. It's compounded and more confusing by the amount of things that are available to be made aware of. So there's a lot of, part of the value in showing up and making content and kind of establishing yourself or your brand as a authority or a voice is you give people a spot, a location, or a brand to go for updates. If that makes sense. Think about how many different tools there are. Think about how many different new tech integrate. There's so much stuff out there that a lot of it just becomes habituated, right? It's like you spray cologne on, it smells great for 5 minutes, then you have no idea, but other people can. So you even mentioned, you sent out 20,000, 100 people came, 5 were competitors. You could go live for the next year, and even people in your network would probably forget how to spell your name, right? It's like you need to be prolific in the amount of content you're making, and I guess recurring as far as when you choose to do that. And it's more moving for me like a media network, maybe not even a network, but a media outlet.
Yeah. When I arrived at Super, the way that I would say this is constant gentle pressure, and Boolean quickly overturned that. And it's no, constant in your face is what it is, not constant gentle pressure. And it's like, yeah, it works is the thing. It's a commitment that is never ending. Like one of the things that I do is I try to keep my weekly impressions up above X amount over time. That's what kind of guides my content and how I create it generally from a week to week basis. And it's annoying because I'm trying to chase a goal that is never truly going to be achieved, but it works in the sense of I get rewarded from it with, things like this. We get to speak and talk to other people, and then, getting to talk to other partners and cool, app companies and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a commitment that it does not have an end date. And I think that's the thing that scares people, is that it's a black hole,
Yeah. Well, even if it scares them, and this is where I get to plug what's about to happen next week. So I got 10 traps and manifestos to go over, like this value first framework that I've just been. Last week was the trigger. Like you had a trigger, Rob. Like when I was talking about AI, and you're like, all right, I'm signing up with Nico, and we're gonna figure this out, right? Last week when we had such a great chat and it resonated, like, okay, I don't want to let it keep like seeping out like this, right? Because I do think it's going to be very impactful, because what I'm trying to help solve for is, no matter how common sense all this sounds, right? You get leaders, like they love it, but they cannot transition into it for some reason. That's where, as I'm writing this material and like all the best practices say, like case studies, data, I haven't been around many leaders that are like, oh, they got those results, let's do it. Like, it's so rare. Like, so what's in the way? And I think at this point, and this started from conversations with George about the superhuman framework, right? Like, brilliant framework, like clear as day. If an organization signed up for that, like, they should have success. Why can't they? Why don't they?
Yep.
When you start to match it with the principles of industrial age, like thinking, and could be go-to-market, sales, marketing, all the measurement that we have, like so much of my challenges internally as you try to go customer first and customer experience focused, it's like, oh, I don't know how that's going to work with the way our sales team is compensated, right? We can't even add a pharma layer, even though we are like diehard, that's the value. We've got people that could focus on pharma, but our sales regions are regional. So I don't know how to add a pharma focused sales guy, and literally the infrastructure of it all, right? That is what I come back to. Like, they don't know how to structure an organization. And that's where I hope to provide some space, like, just like, try this stuff. Like, it's not all 10 of the things at once, but find something. You've got to start this is the last year that you can do this on your own accord, right? A lot of this is like, AI is going to force this, whether you want it to or not.
Yep.
If you're smaller, and we see this happening a lot right now in the ecosystem, if you're smaller right now, you can just shoot past elite partners, right? Because it's not a well-known quantity. They're too big to change. It requires a little more agility right now to change and shift. Like, I can't even fathom having to switch out of a services, like a billable hours based system, when all of a sudden, instead of taking an hour, it takes 5 minutes, and the customer knows that, right? Like, and your whole infrastructure is built off of that.
It's going to, I mean, Dharmesh is already mentioning, I think where you're going is like, yeah, it was SaaS, but now it's going to be RaaS, which is results as a service, kind of with the AI and agentic components. Like, you know what? That speaks best to the customer. Why would they not pay a percentage or pay for results? That's what you're promising. So it's much more customer and value centric, I think. But to your point, it changes a couple things. One is like the standardization of how measurements are applied. The key one for that you and I have talked about, Chris, is like time and quarters, right? Like, this is a longer investment. We're going to have to measure it for longer than Q1 and 2. Like, it takes the time horizon, the x-axis, out of ROI to an extent. Now, there is some balance, but it's like, what's the ROI on you showing up on LinkedIn every day? I'm not done figuring that out yet, because I'm still moving forward. Chris, but you just said it's a black hole. It's like, I know that it's working. I don't necessarily need causality. I'd prefer infinite correlation to see a bunch of different points that have been touched and a bunch of different value. Some of it I anticipated, some of it I did not. That, to me, to your point, is really hard for people to think through, because it's been that way forever. It's like, this is just how things have been done, and that, ceiling is about to be shattered by a lot of things, AI being one of them.
Right. But here's why, like, the urgency of this year, and why I say it like that, like, especially if you're small, right? The big guns that have a hard time turning the ship around, at some point in the future, I'm saying it's next year, AI is going to be so good that it's going to turn the ship for them, right? And if they get ahead and then they get AI, like, there is no catching up.
Yeah.
Right. And so, trying to create the space for people to say, like, maybe there is a way we can do stuff differently, right? Because we have no choice, right? Like, the whole concept of advertising, like, in the face of AI, AI is not going to need advertising, like, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, why would it? It's the whole point is to influence, to, in a lot of ways, to overcome some gap in your offering, or or the awareness or whatever. And I'm just curious on which, and if I could get your take, Crispy, like, which domino. I feel like there's going to be a domino that falls, and then all of a sudden, like, the B2B and SaaS landscape is going to change dramatically, right? Because let's say advertising is the first domino. Like, it becomes very clear that ads are not in any way valuable to the AI agents that are making decisions that everybody's employing.
Yeah.
Oh, Casey, let me just get this. I can't stop. Like, marketers doing this to themselves. right? Most of the time. Like I was that guy inside of organizations. Like, how can we get so much buy-in from the top, like all the money, all for like goals and vision, right? But then we cannot move inside of organizations because we cannot get alignment and other people, stepping up to talk about the message. But so like, let's say advertising falls because, by the way, the data is fucking clear already, in my opinion. When you hear people talk about Google Ads and all this stuff just dropping to the floor, like, so it's like, okay, that's not a viable path anymore. That like a whole vertical, like gone. All the creative that supports it, all of the supporting. So from that perspective, like what do you think is first to?
Ooh, I can answer this, but go ahead, Crispy.
I've got a more spicy opinion on this one. Yeah. So I think about attending the ecosystem kickoff a couple weeks ago, and I'm not hating on Brian Halligan. The dude is fucking visionary and brilliant. But talking about the AI first domino thing, if I enter a Zoom call and there's a digital twin of someone that I'm supposed to talk to, I'm fucking leaving. Like, I'm not staying. There's no fucking chance I'm staying and talking to a digital fucking avatar of someone else. Like, I'm the guy, if I have to go into a chat bot and talk to customer service and it's AI shit, I'm jamming in the words customer service a billion times till I talk to a person. And I don't think that's ever going to change with people. Like, there's always going to be some level of mistrust with AI on, is this going to like be our overlords one day? Like, this is why I say please and thank you to Alexa whenever I ask her stuff, because I know that she's gonna remember it when she's like having us in a fucking graveyard in 300 years or whatever. I think the domino is going to be the first proven like AI co-pilot or agent or avatar or something like that that's actually able to translate business requirements into configuration of a system. The one that actually works and is not I don't want to hand HubSpot either, but like Breeze generally as a platform, like kind of sucks. Like when I type in, I need this report, I need this workflow, it's not exactly what I need each time. The domino for me is when something comes out that truly becomes the agent or assistant that can actually build things out that meet business requirements and think about the use case beyond just the problem and not be so transactional with I'm asking this, deliver this, and think about higher level strategy. That to me will change the way that service providers operate in this ecosystem, because it could render HubSpot, consulting and configuration, or like any CRM, like obsolete theoretically. That's what I think the first domino is going to be. It's not going to be this fucking digital twin of someone. Like, God, I was rolling my eyes so hard when I saw that on the screen. But yeah, that's my spicy opinion.
Sheridan had a really good take on this too with service and chatbots and whatnot. He was like, I'm all for it, and it's great, but they'll eventually be played. Like, they remove the empathy and moodiness and whatnot, right? So there's an accuracy component that's like, are you answering or are you helping with what I am asking? That's accuracy. Precision is the ability to do that a bunch of times in a row. As these things get more accurate with like training and different updates and versions, they will, I think, innately become more precise and more attuned to delivering, value on a consistent basis. My spicy take was, I don't know if it's about a domino to fall, but it's like the future of, I feel like this is more present already in B2C, but it's like the future of marketing is customer service. It's social proof. Like in a world where trust of other people and networks is really, really important, marketing would be more based on review. I mean, think about like you going to Amazon to buy something and it's like, this has 5 stars, but it's from one person. This has 4.9 stars, but it's from 25,000 reviews. What are you going to probably spend the money on if other variables are roughly the same? The one that has more social proof. And so that to me is the domino where people are, you talk about like the death of advertising. Not necessarily. I just think ads, it'll be the death of shitty ones, the death of like radio ads that are 30, like very templatized, very the same every single time. Patagonia and Stanley have done really cool things, where they've gone viral for, I think a girl said, man, like, oh, my jacket, I got rained on today, this fell apart, whatever, and they flew and delivered her one in a helicopter to wherever she was. Stanley's done this with their cups, right? Like it'll be more social proof type of marketing. I'm seeing that everywhere, on TikTok and other places. So you could say the same with service companies. It's not the death of them. They're not dying, but the slow ones will.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be is culling the right word? Maybe like thinning of people that are not adaptable, that don't, move quickly. So that's like anything else though.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I just try to
Stop
pay
hating on
attention to the
marketers.
signals, folks. Like I just got an inbound email this week. I think it's the first one talking about Dharmesh and agents. Like it's coming, right? And I think that's what we're not just saying this because we have a lot of fun creating content, right? Which we definitely do. We're saying that because we care about a lot of most of the ecosystem, I'll say. And like I said, the only way that HubSpot does not take its rightful place, in my opinion, is if it doesn't get the support that it needs from the ecosystem. Like there's literally just not enough people to help the next person who says, I'm having a problem, with association labels, right? Because that's how we lose, is that person never gets attention. And that's where HubSpot's doing everything in its power. You mentioned the ecosystem kickoff. Like everybody came out of that talking about source, the source points instead of sold points. And my main takeaway, obviously I'm a little biased to how much time I've spent with AI, but my main takeaway was like Yami's message, like get up to speed. Like we're leading this thing and we're not waiting for you. Like period. Right. So no matter how much you don't like it, or it's going to definitely impact your service-based business. Right. And you don't even have to this is where if you can show up and just talk about these challenges openly, that's all you have to do. Right. And then people will start, like customers start to engage you in a way like, hey, customer, this used to take us 2 hours. So that's why it says 2 hours and this amount of money over here. It only takes us 15, right? When you can have a dialogue like that, they will tell you exactly how to fill the other space. And it's probably just showing up for them in a new way. Like it's not packing more of those 15 minutes in. It's like, oh, of course, we've been talking about sending out care packages or sending out personalized videos or all these things that we never make time for. Like now you can, and they will tell you very directly. I get passionate about this.
There's a world where it's like not alienate or what word am I looking for? Ostracize the ecosystem. But I referenced my 11-year-old already once in this, this chat. Ecosystem is not the biggest, in terms of ecological impact. Biosphere is. So whenever you're trying to grow an audience and grow your total available market, you can't be hold off and have, people thinking of HubSpot and the ecosystem and content and all that as a cult, which I've heard. I was a CrossFitter, so I've heard that. It's like, oh, you guys are like a real tight-knit community. Great. We also want to be inclusive. And that there's almost this level of professional empathy that I've tried to hone in on, where it's like the jargon, the lingo of CRM for a while was Salesforce. It's like almost like Band-Aid. Band-Aid is the brand. Adhesive medical strip is what it is actually called. So if HubSpot can be seen on the same like linguistic playing field as Salesforce, which it is already, right? Like set up your HubSpot, just that vernacular is making its way into everyday talk. That's how you, I feel like, solve for the greatest amount of people, is expanding even more past ecosystem and into biosphere or whatever it's called, bigger than that. You're going to have this exodus of Salesforce companies, right? You need to be ready to receive them and speak the language in their terms, period. So there's an element that's like, we're not trying to alienate marketers or anybody else, but we're also not remaining exclusive and just, caring about the ecosystem. You have to care about people outside of it that need to move into this ecosystem, if you will, to find value.
Well, I guess we're at time, guys. So usually Rob and I might just go as long as we want. But since we got the special guest today, want to value your time, man. I appreciate you, showing up with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're the best, Chris.
Yeah,
I'm not going to tell you which one of you I'm talking to. Both.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining today, and you just have an amazing weekend. We'll catch you next time.
Stay awesome. Keep doing it big.
Woo.